Hi, guys, and welcome back. Yes, we are live on Thursday night. And I am set up in my study, and yes, I've got stuff moved all over the place because I got a little heater behind me, and I want it to flow underneath the curtain, so to speak. So, keep all three. Good evening. How you doing? We have survived the blizzard of 25, or that's what it looks like down here in the deep south. We got the snow in, and we actually still had snow today, which was a shocker. Usually we get snow and it's gone in 12 hours just because it'll melt because the ground's too warm. But this has actually lasted 3 days. That is pretty impressive. Jason, good evening. The Saxonade, hello to Maine. Bear, good evening, sir. Jeff, hello to Newfoundland, Canada. Cal Tipper, hello to Louisiana. Jared Oliver, hello there. Donald, you keep that white lumpy rain down there. Oh, it was awesome. Had a great time. Yep, Blackie survived the blizzard. Colleen, hello there. Thank you. I'm having a great time. We're big kids. We want to get out there and look at it and play around with it. Hammock Mountain, glad to have met you at Hammock Con. 4 inches of snow in Washington, North Carolina. Those Zip Cube firelighters, they do work. Yeah, it goes. Especially for us old guys, I need a fire. It goes. It goes really well. Keep all three. Hello, Jason Beecher. Upstate New York, 17. I hear you. It's going to be 20 here tonight. Fish Golf 2, good evening to Illinois. William Moffitt, hello. Buck 112, hello there to Rome, Georgia. Tennessee Smoky, thawing out. Yeah, we're actually doing really good. We never lost power, which was awesome. The snow came in subtle. It wasn't an ice storm. We had ice for just a few minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And then it changed over to snow. It was just a gentle snow, which was perfect. We didn't have a bunch of trees coming down or nothing like that. And we were prepared for it, but at the same time we had it. So we had power, which was great. Yeah, midlife wonder, you're not wiping ice out of your beard. Yep. I had a bunch of people ask me, said, Blackie, why ain't you out there camping in it? Because A, Blackie's old. B, been there, done that. Have not camped in snow and all like that. And I could have set up a tent and all like that, but it'd been fake. You guys had known it, that I'd been out there I enjoyed it as much as I could, but I'm not in the mountains somewhere camping. If I'm going to go camp in snow, we're going someplace. I want a view. You know what I mean? Not my backyard. Will Rowell, you got 3.5 inches up there? Cool. Frank, good evening. Tim Lacey, hello to Paris, Tennessee. Ken Aldridge, good evening, sir. Gerald, hello to New Jersey. 12 degrees in upstate New York. Awesome. Wheeling, West Virginia area. Awesome. Hello, Robbie in Dublin, Ireland. Thanks for tuning in. Susan, hello to North Texas. Cool. Yeah, Mitchell, got down to 45. I hear you. Gear boy, hello there. James Singer, good evening. Briar Smoke, hello there. 64 in the Sierras. Jonathan Frisbee, Fearless Journeys. Awesome, brother. Hope you're doing well. Supposed to be 8 degrees there. I hear you. Oh, cool. Jeff, yeah, about around the cabin. My sister-in-law is from Stephenville Crossing. Awesome. Yes, around the cabin, I'm doing well. Taking it day by day. I mean, just enjoying life. Um, we think the only things that have popped up from my stroke is, like I said, that finger don't want to work right for some reason, and I'm not regulating body heat as well as I once did. So I will be warm, and my right leg will be complete ice, and go to aching like crazy, and then it'll a couple hours later it'll flip. It'll be hot like I'm running a fever, and the rest of the body will be cold, and it's apparently trying to rewire up in there. And so some of my body regulation. So I'm wearing multiple layers, as you can see. I mean, when I walked into the restaurant today, the first I took my wife to work. The first day we went to eat, that we didn't cook, and I come walking in, I look like a snowman, you know. And the lady said, well, "Is it what?" I said, "A, the Pathfinder ain't got no heat right now, and B, I don't regulate body heat well, so I'm layering up. Just plan on it." Had a good laugh with it. Andy Knight, good evening to South Georgia. 6 inches, cool. 21 degrees, 15 degrees with wind chill. Roy, yeah. Chris Bird, good evening. Oh, yeah, love global warming. Record snows in the southern part of the world. You hear about that? When they had their one, they have their summer right now, but Antarctica had record snow and ice growth this year. So, Craig, good evening. Doing pretty well. Susan, thank you very much. Cordell, Australia calling. G'day. Hope you're doing well down there. How's your summer going down there? Oh, Will Rowell or Rowell. I'm sorry if I am butchering that. I apologize, Will. I don't mean to say it badly. But what do you think about the 1887 Winchester shotgun? It's a bit awkward, to be just deadly honest. When they got Browning to design that, he did not want to. He wanted to make a pump, and Winchester wanted a lever action. And so they made that gun, and Browning himself always said it was a compromise. And it did well in certain ways, but it wasn't able to compete against the pumps that were just coming into being, the Spencer pump, and I think Marlin had a pump. And so when they finally went back to Browning and said, okay, go ahead and make your pump, and he made the 1893, which became the 1897, a much better gun. So I have played with the 87, both a couple originals and the modern, and you have to shuck it. It is a Klingon weapon. You do not soft anything on it. It can be reliable. It can shoot well, but it's just a little of an awkward design, really, to be honest. It looks cool, but it's a little bit of awkwardness. Gray Wolf, good evening. Michigan Silverback, hello there. Oh no, Dead Wolf, you broke your Kukri Plus today. Oh no. Dead Wolf Resistance 13. Has it got some way you can send it back or whatever? Terry, good evening. Yeah, Gray Wolf, the thing is, you're at 25 degrees. I'm at 30 right now. So we're within 5 degrees, and I got snow. I got 8 to 10 inches of snow. So yeah, and this is day 3, and I think I'm down to like 2 inches left now. It's all melted down, but still, the temperature between two of us is not that different right now. Mike Simmons, good evening, brother. David, hello to Orlando. Last Chance Knives, good evening. Rebecca, yes, I was at HangCon for Thursday, and I left late Friday. I was coming back up here, And I would have stayed, but I had some things that I wanted to get done up here, and I could see this weather coming. And I had to make some preps because I was sure we were going to get snow. So I had to be back up here to make sure everything was ready to go. And it was. I was fully set up whenever it hit. Mitchell, awesome. Glad you recovered so well. The brain will rewire. Um, they had a young man several years ago that he was a genius. He really, really high IQ, and they did a CAT scan of his brain, and the entire core of his brain is dead. It was just the outside edge was lit up. They don't know how he did it. It happened when he was a small child. He'd been deprived of oxygen, and none of the brain functions the way that they thought it should. He's fully, perfectly normal, has a super IQ, and all like this. He can do mathematic calculus in his head faster than you can punch it into a calculator. And yet, when they CAT scanned his brain, they found out that it's like his brain's dead except the outer quarter inch all the way around. Somehow the brain reworked. The body will adapt if you give it the chance. Harold, hello there to Front Royal, Virginia. Roy, exactly. A 97. I've had two 97s and loved them. Robbie, I will do that for Ireland. I hope y'all do well in the weather. And what just blowed from here, y'all get it in 3 days. Because if you'll go look, excuse me, y'all. If you'll go look at Mobile, Alabama, and then you look at Montgomery, Alabama, draw a line between those two. That is the beginning path. And you watch these storm fronts come down and they hit the Gulf of Mexico, they slide across and start going up. And you plot that, and that becomes the storms of all of New England. And then they go across the Atlantic and they hit Europe. So if it hits me, 5 days later it hits Europe. So we just had a massive cold hit with snow. So that means today's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. About Monday or Tuesday, y'all are going to get it over in Ireland and that part of Europe. Dear boy, what was HangCon? It was a very large hammock gathering in South Florida. And just do a search for HangCon. And it's just a big get together for people that's into hammocks. Brett Johnson, good evening. Glad you made it. I got you. Dead Wolf, yep. Weld it back. David Burkhalter, do you ever use the Buck 110 as an EDC? Yes. For many years I did, and I still, on occasion, where I realize there's something that I want to accomplish where I don't want to carry a belt knife, but I want more than a Swiss Army knife, my Buck 110. I'll pull it out and slide it onto the belt sheath and carry it with me, or just slide it in my pocket. I've cleaned deer, I've cleaned hog, I've cleaned cows with the Buck 110, and done about all of your bushcraft type stuff I have done with the Buck 110 before. And so I've got my Buck 110 right over there. Y'all excuse me. I'm just having one of them nights. Rebecca, yes, I actually got to shake hands and talk to Shug for just a second. I had really enjoyed his stuff years ago when he was just getting started. I haven't followed him recently, but I knew exactly who he was. And he was the one that made me get into Hennessy hammocks, because he did a thing where he was showing a Hennessy hammock and getting in and out of it. And I had never seen a bottom entry hammock, and it just blowed me away. And so I had to get involved in it. That he really influenced me. Richard, awesome. Bear, it's kind of like we call a severe weather alert, but they call them over there in Europe, they call them a red weather. storms, wind, low temps, Arctic blast type stuff. Billy P, is a surplus Swiss mess kit any good? Yes, they're decent. If you're talking about the stove and all set, yes, absolutely. If you're talking about that little plastic mess kit eaten out of, I haven't had one of those. But as far as the actual mess kit, like the M40 or whatever, yes, they are very, very good. All right, let me catch back up. Thanks for all the comments, guys. I really appreciate it. Tim Funk, hello to East Berlin, Pennsylvania. Aaron, hello to the Green Mountains. Glad you enjoy the ground pounder series. There's going to be a lot more coming with that. Washburn Billy, good evening. Okay, I think I've caught back up now. But yeah, the Buck 110 was just the knife for all the young men when I was a boy. I carried either a Buck 110 or a K-Bar 1607. Most of the K-Bar 1607 because it was thinner than the Buck. And I suffered for the same thing that most of the men in my family suffer for. We don't have any butt. And so sitting on that big old thick buck knife in the back pocket was like, you could always look down a line of students in school and you'd see the one sitting off to the side and you knew he was right-handed and had a Buck 110 in his back pocket. You'd sit down on them old meddling wood desk and you hear tonk when he'd sit down in them jeans. It was that Buck 110. Yes, back in them days, they didn't care if us boys carried knives. And a lot of the girls carried knives too, so it was just a different world back then. You were expected to be responsible for yourself and you would take the consequences of your actions. There, it is right now 30 degrees and it's going to be down like 20 tonight. Now, it was 16 last night and with wind chill, it put it down to really low. But it actually warmed up to like 40 today, 40, 41, and then it dropped back down. So we lost a lot of the snow, but it's still quite a bit here. In fact, I took a video this afternoon. You're going to see tomorrow. Jonathan Gable, thank you. Anonymous, K-Bar 1607. You put it in the Buck 110 sideways, you can see they're very similar, but when you go this way, there's a whole lot of difference in thickness, Justin Coon, good evening, brother. Yes, Benjamin, Bo and Luke Duke carried a Buck 110. It was so common in my era, which was that era you're talking about, that it was expected that if a guy pulled a knife out of his back pocket, it was going to be a Buck 110. It was just the knife everybody carried. Aaron Williams, hello. Okay, brother. Thanks for stopping in, Justin. Say hello to Pink for me. Stanley, hello to Cokeburg, Pennsylvania. Were you in the military? I signed up, I enlisted, and I was not able to serve. I had to have a medical waiver to get in, and I was in basic whenever President Reagan revoked all those medical waivers and went to thinning out the herd, and so I was unable to serve because of that. But I did enlist, and I went through all of it. But when I went through my physical, I had to have 4 separate waivers in order to get in because I was originally born crippled. I was born club-footed, and they had corrected it surgically and had to go to 4 different opinions for where the Army sent me to it before they ever said, yeah, let him go to basic. And then that was the end of it. So I was not allowed to serve. I wanted to, but I was never allowed to serve. Ever use a Winchester 30 knife? I know what you're talking about. No, I have not, not to my knowledge. Yep, David Bullcrawler. First day of hunting season at school, everybody had a 30 or a shotgun hanging in the back window of their pickup truck. We would hunt before we went to school. We'd leave the gun in the car. We'd come in with a laundry bag, walk in the bathroom, change into our school clothes, put our hunting clothes back in and put them back in the truck, go to class. When class was over, we'd leave and go back to the woods. We'd change back, go back to the woods, and we'd hunt till dark, and then we came home. I remember them days. Robbie, Blackie, do you think a 1075 is a good knife steel? It is a very forgiving knife steel. It holds an edge well. It's easy to sharpen, and it will bend rather than break. Now, depending on the job, that might be what you want. Okay. If you're wanting something that holds an edge a whole lot more, it's not as good as some of the other ones. But it is not a bad steel. You know, a 1075. I know a lot of the Condor knives or something like that, like 1075 or something like that. And they seem to do just fine as far as a field knife, you know. Gary, hello to Roswell, New Mexico. James Caudell, what is your go-to poncho now these days? In my haversack, I carry the One Wind rain cloak, which is a tent, and it also zips up the front. It's got a hood you put on, and so it's a cloak, like you think the classic, you know, cloak, you know, as opposed to like a poncho. I like it better than I do the poncho. Yeah, you don't have handholds to come out, but it does just as good as a poncho as long as your hands would be inside, and it converts to a shelter much easier, and it's about that big and weighs nothing. I keep it in the bottom of the haversack. So that's what I'm doing with it right now. Oh, cool. Carlos, you got you one of the Swiss Army Knife Field Masters. Glad you did. Roy, yeah, 110. A lot of it, like I said, a lot of my generation hand down knife is a buck 110. An old timer, a sharp finger, or a buck 110. Those were the pocket knives. Really, the Swiss Army knife was something kind of, some guys had them, but the vast majority of us poor rednecks did not have Swiss Army knives. We had a 3-blade Stockman. Let me see right here. You had a 3-blade Stockman, or you had a 2-blade Trapper. 2-blade Trapper. Or you had a big pocket knife, like the old timer, the buck 110, or the K-bar, or some guys even like, there was a Uncle Henry, I think it was, just another big pocket knife. But those were the ones. The buck 110 was, by God, the number one choice of it. And what kept a lot of the guys from getting them was the price of them. You know, we could pick up a old timer for $18. A buck 110 was like $24. That was a lot of money to us back then, you know. And it was a big Christmas present a lot of years. You got a buck 110. And the other guys were bragging about the new rifle they got, or my granddaddy finally let me have his pickup for a first car. But by far the biggest bragging rights kids having came to school, I got me a buck 110 after he came back from Christmas. Didn't care about the new sweater or the new shoes, but I got a buck 110. That was a big thing. Okay, get you back up. James Cotter, why do you prefer a sack versus a Leatherman? The vast majority of what I'm doing is not tinkering on anything that's got screws or whatever in it. That's where the Leatherman really shines, is when you're tinkering on something. And so if you're doing electronics, you're working on, repairing something, or you do whatever, or you're someone like a plumber or whatever that works with your hands and all, or even a farmer or whatever, a Leatherman may be a better choice because it's got all the tools. So it's a tool kit, and it's a secondary as a pocket knife. I do realize that a lot of the generation that's around right now never had a pocket knife. They had a Leatherman. That was their pocket knife. See? And so I do realize that. But I came up where it was pocket knives and tools were separate things. So I do have a nice Leatherman. It rides in the glove box of the car. Because it broke down on the side of the road, I got tools, and that's what I'd use it. To me, it's a tool as opposed to a pocket tool. It's a tool. And the Swiss Army knife is my pocket knife, EDC, every day. And then I will augment it by need. So, for example, the old timer that's got the saw on it. See, I may have a job that I need something. I would stick this in my pocket or into the kit to be able to do that particular job or whatever. If we're going to be fishing, my granddaddy loved a Granddaddy Barlow, and it works like a folding Mora. And so this is a little fillet knife. This is a little processed small game knife, stuff like that. So if we're fishing, one of these would be a good addition because I can fillet with it pretty easily. And then I'll trade in and out depending on the job. So the Swiss Army knife is on me all the time. It is the pocket knife that I carry every day. These others, and I have showed the tub. I mean, it's a storage tub like that. It's full of pocket knives. But one tends up on top on a separate shelf. I pull them out as need arises because what I expect to be doing that day, and I plug that in. And then sometimes I just get nostalgic, and I'll pull an old Barlow. That was my very first pocket knife, was a Barlow. And I'll pull out a Barlow to whittle with or something. I just don't think of a Leatherman as a pocket knife. I think of it as a tool. And I knew many in the generation before me, they thought the same way about these. This isn't a pocket knife. These are tools. They just happen to have a blade in it, like this is a pocket knife, Blackie. That's a tool pack. And my granddaddy, I gave him a Swiss Army knife for Christmas one year. And he was nice, and he took it, and he was gracious with it. And then he gave it away within 3 days because he had no use for it. He said, if I want to work on the car or whatever, I'll pull out the tool. I'll pull out the ammo can full of tools. So, understood. All right, let me catch back up. Can't, yeah. Ain't no kill like overkill. Oh, I toted so many things in my pockets, Oh my God. David Burkhalter, do you ever work with deer antler for handles or scales for flint strikers, whatever? Yeah, I've done that before. Drill it out, use good epoxy. If you're going to put a ferro rod into a hunk of antler or something, take a file and cut grooves or something into the end of the ferro rod that's going to be in there so that it's got something for the epoxy to grip. It's too slick and it'll just come out otherwise. But take and rough it up and make a crosshatch pattern on it, almost like screw threads, so that when I fill it full of epoxy down there and I put that thing in and squeeze the excess out, of course, put tape around your ferro rod, tape around the top of your piece of antler, put a big blob of epoxy into the hole, push down the rod, and that'll squeeze out any extra. Turn the rod a little bit, make sure you squeeze so it's all the way bottom down, give it a little turn, make sure it's in there good, and then let it set. Wipe off any excess, and that way whenever it's good and hard, that's when you take off the tape and you'll be good to go, and it'll stay there that way. But I've seen a lot of guys take them and put them in something real nice and everything, and then there went the rod because they just stuck it in the epoxy and it's too slick. that rod just doesn't want to grip. The epoxy won't go into it. James Caldwell, if you want to carry it, brother. I mean, they are just they're perfectly viable as a pocket knife. It's just what you're doing, like I said. And I know a lot of the generation that's up right now, the younger guys in the mid-30s and stuff, they only came up, they weren't allowed to have a pocket knife, they could have a Leatherman. So it was a rite of passage for us boys at my age. When you finally were old enough, they trusted you with a pocket knife, not say, here, and when you got done whittling with the old man, you had to turn it back in. You could keep it. And I was 5 when I got my first pocket knife, which was an old Barlow, a cheap Barlow. But that was a rite of passage, was you got your first pocket knife. And that was they could see if they could trust you with a knife. The first time you got to go hunting alone. Before that, you would be allowed to hunt with the group, and they were pretty strict on you to make sure you knew about muzzle control and everything else. And if you wasn't, you were back at the truck. You don't hunt. You learn to be part of a group and be safe. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. First time you were allowed to crank the truck or crank the car on a cold morning. First time you were selected to light the fire in the fireplace or the bonfire out back or to start the barbecue grill. Those were rites of passage for a young man whenever I was coming up. It meant they trusted you to do it. Oh, Jerry, yeah. Yeah, diffuser definitely would help. Keep it from being such a hot spot. Diffuse it out a little bit. Sounds good. Kent, yeah. The ferro rod that came with it won't spark. There are some very low quality ferro rods out there. Have you tried sparking it with something besides the cold steel Bushman? If it's not a good 90-degree edge, it's not shaving enough material to get a spark. If it's rounded in any way, try it with something else. If you got a box cutter and you're willing to sacrifice a blade, put the edge up there and see it. If it throws good sparks, you know that your knife's got too rounded an edge. You need to take a file and make it have a 90-degree edge. If it still doesn't throw sparks worth a dang, just get you going Amazon or whatever, and you can order blanks of a ferro rod and just get you one like you want then. I've had to change a couple. I had one at one time that somebody gave me for Christmas. It had a beautiful handle on it. It garbage. I mean, you'd bear down and you'd get a faint spark every so often. It was just too hard. And I even would take a piece of a hacksaw blade using the teeth and try to dig into it, and I hardly could use it. So eventually I just cut it off, drilled it out, and put another rod in it. So it can be done. Yeah, Gray Wolf, being trusted to run the lawnmower. Then you found out that was not something you wanted to be doing. I remember coming in from in August. We're cutting that big yard with a push mower, not a self-propelled, not a riding. It was a push mower, and it was 105 with about 90% humidity, and it took 2 hours to cut that yard. And whenever I finally walked in, I told my dad I was so sick of cutting yard. He said, "So was I. That's why I had you. Tag, you're it. When you give me a grandson, you can get out of it." Jason, thanks for dropping in. Blackie, what type of tires do you use on your truck? All season, I suppose. Pretty much, yeah. Um, Down here where I'm at, I'm in the mud some, but I'm on road or hard pack road the vast majority. We don't have snow, it's a great exception, and don't have ice, it's a great exception. And so I use just kind of like all terrain tires. And if I have to pick something for whatever, it will be a tire that's got a pretty good tread to it, because I'm very mindful of mud, because we got red clay down here. And red clay, whenever it is dry, it is concrete. Red clay, whenever it is wet, is soup. And so the perfect all-weather road down here, because I'm right at that threshold between Florida and further up, is sand and red clay mixed. Perfect road, because sand, when it gets wet, it grips. And so the clay soft, the sand grips. Makes for a good road. Flip it. In the dead of summer, when that sand gets bone dry and you can't drive down it because it rolls. The red clay is like concrete. It grips. So perfect. So I need at least an all-terrain tread to be able to go through that stuff in all the different seasons. So something like that's what I normally go for. I am not a aficionado that can quote tread designs and etc. I was taught by these old woodsmen, and we were so I got a lot of used tires coming up, but I got where I could recognize what kind of tires did good and what kind of tires just got packed full of mud and spun. So Washburn Billy, there's a lot of preppers down here. It's a way of life down here. Dale Morris, good evening. Two guys in those arts, good evening. Oh, yeah. Gear Boy are my trucks. My Pathfinder is 4x4. My old pickup truck is a 2x4. 2-wheel drive. Backwoods Rambler. It is actually more like driving on, icy, muddy road. You know what I mean? Because you can be doing everything right and it'll just start going sideways no matter what you're doing with that red clay. JB Caudell Knives, hello there. John Lattermick, good evening, brother. What is the date of your camp out in April? It will be April the 7th through the 13th at Geneva State Forest Lake. Will, what do you think of number 4 buckshot for hunting and defense? Really good to choose, especially if you're going to be at like 25, 30 yards. Yeah, really good. You get a much bigger pattern on them. You got much greater chance of penetration, much greater chance of a fatal hit. Yes, the double and triple aught buck are individually bigger pellets, but when you get out at 20 yards, there's a 3 feet between each one of them pellets. And so you're only going to hit him with 1 or 2. It might as well be shooting him with a squirrel gun. So I like number 3 and number 4 buckshot for that very reason, because I'll get 8 or 10 hits and get a greater shock, a greater chance. Now for home defense, yeah, but I tell you, a load of number 5s and a turkey load is a much better home defense because it doesn't penetrate outer walls well, so you don't have to worry about it going through and getting somebody in the other room. At the same time, it turn you into hamburger. And a big room's 12 foot across. I mean, that's a big room. So if you're within 12 feet of the muzzle of a shotgun and I hit you with a load of number 5s and a turkey load, it's bad when the coroner goes, ooh, yeah. So it's a really good defense, especially for home defense. Common Sense Karen, good evening. Blackie, any thoughts on the WCFK knife? Really good knife. All of the WC knives are very well thought out. They look a little different. I'll tell you that straight off the bat. They do look a little odd, but once you get it in your hand and you start actually working with it, it will spoil you. Any of their knives, any of his knives, but especially when you talk about the WCSK, the FK, the all that, trust me, if you can afford it, get one. You'll never regret it. Tim Pierce, Blackie, how about some videos on swamp skills? You got it. I've already planned on showing a swamp fire, and me and Bear have talked about. He's got a swampy hunk on his land. We're going to go down there before all the skeeters hatch out and do a little bit of talking about around swamps and stuff, recognizing cedars and knobs, good fishing places, what to look for when you're fishing in the swamps, etc. Book that I recommend is by J. Wayne Fears, Swamp Camping. Really good book about down here in the deep south. J. Wayne Fears, Swamp Camping. Really good book. David Burkhalter, thank you for your service. Yeah, but I agree with you. Also, pure white sand, it just, during the summer when it all gets dried out and there ain't nothing to hold together, your tires will just sit there and roll. There's nothing to grip. And you try to walk on that road and your feet just sinking into it as you're going. Everything just rolls under your feet. Yeah, Springer, we got 8 to 10 inches here where I'm at. Satchmo, hello. Jimmy Dunlap, hello. Roy, Blackie, how do I get on being a Silver Wolf? Just simply come to one of our Silver Wolf classes. And we're talking about having a gathering for Silver Wolves, not just necessarily classes, but a gathering. Those are still in the works. We will have a Silver Wolf class in May. We'll be doing the official video on that very, very shortly. Just hang on, I'll give you that. But feel free to come out. The youngest person we've had out thus far was 25 because he was wanting to learn how to work with his dad and get his dad back into it. The oldest student we've had has been 97. So, yeah, come on out. Miss Pam's in the house, low 40s. Progressive Southern. Yeah, the Tomahawk is a very good tool. My first choice is a kukri. My second choice is a Tomahawk. I have done extensive work with both of those designs, and that Sarah KT is a good design. So, give me my first choice, it's a kukri. I can't have my first choice. Give me a Tomahawk. I can do a lot with it. For 25 years, I did it in living history with that thing. I've cleaned game with it. I've, shaved. I've done all kinds of stuff. Where we'd have competitions, they'd say, okay, you don't have a knife. All you got is your Tomahawk. You got to build a fire. Like the one log challenge, but it's with a Tomahawk. And you had to throw the thing. You had to do all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, it could be a lot, but they are very versatile. There's a reason they hung on for 300 years. Two guys. Blackie, any thoughts on tent stoves? I cannot really speak well to that. I only got one, and that's the first small tent stove I've had. Now, I had a U.S. military Yukon stove for many years. Really, really liked it, but I traded it off to somebody over the years. But the little small stoves they have today for tent stoves, I really can't speak to them because I only got one, and my experience with it's been very limited. To my mind, the firebox is too small, and so therefore I carried a big old sack of lump, L-U-M-P, charcoal, not charcoal briquettes, lump charcoal, and that's what I fed mine when I did a couple overnight camps with it because it works well, but the capacity is just so low you can't get a lot into it and it doesn't burn for very long. Blackie, what is the knife steel you want to put your life on? You're a D2 and carbon steel man. My favorite for the most of my life was '01 tool steel. I knew it. I understood it very, very well, and I could maintain it well in the field. That has since changed. And so if it's going to be a knife and I get to pick a knife, okay, it's going to be a WC knife. It will be my Blackbird design, and it will be an AEBL, because AEB, I understand the carbon and everything else, and this is stainless, but I'm here to tell you that AEBL doesn't really get dull. It gets where you just got to push a little harder. But we have a knife that's going around in circulation that was a test knife, that was a Sainer Scout, that I gifted over to Scab over at Choir Boys Outdoors. Gosh, my nose is itching. Choir Boys Outdoors. And he did his test with it and was showing how it would slice, it would do everything. And he thought I had sharpened it up before I gave it to him. And I told him that knife hadn't been sharpened in 2 years. And you're about the dozenth person who has used it for a test. It never truly gets dull. It's just where you got to push down a bit harder. And then when it does, you can pick up a rock and sharpen it. AEBL, as long as it's by William Collins. Now, you take William off the table, '01 tool steel. I'll take a knife from somebody else and '01 tool steel. That's just me. I like D2, but I grew up and I know how to handle a '01. If it's well made '01, that'd be my choice if it ain't a WC knife. Hope that answers your question. Sports Mobile 83, hello to Helen, Georgia. Beautiful place. Did y'all get any snow up there at Helen? Jimmy Dunlap, glad to see you and your friends in Dothan. Got some snow. Blackie, do you hear of many Bigfoot sightings, reports from your neck of the woods? Actually, yeah. In fact, we had one of the Bigfoot, like professional Bigfoot hunter groups came down south of me. There's a large, about 25, 30 minutes from me. It's a large cattle operation called Mercer Cattle. And they, every year, they were having, finding a cow or a big calf that something had killed and fed upon. And when they did an autopsy on it, it was a full-grown cow. And whatever it was hit the cow. It was asleep, standing there, hit the cow so hard, it shattered its spine. Now, let that sink in a minute. This wasn't a vehicle hit it. Something went, that's either one heck of a bear, my God. It broke a cow's spine, shattered it, and then fed on it. And they were coming down there looking, believing it. But there's been quite a few sightings in Conecuh National Forest, and south of us you got the swamps and stuff like that. So people that have believed they've seen it and etc. So, you know, I'm not going to call and say that they're right or wrong. I've seen some odd stuff. I couldn't identify exactly what I saw, but I keep an open mind. It's possible, you know. But I have heard probably 10 reports in the last 2 to 3 years of people I would consider fairly credible. They weren't just seeing some guy in a monkey suit, somebody pulling a practical joke, something like that. We shall see. Oh. Carlos, Blackie, trapper versus stockman. What's the main function? The trapper having that blade. That blade allows it to pierce and go under. And then this part of the blade right here is rounded. So you actually take the other blade, pierce under the skin, and you go underneath and you lay down like that, and it will slide, see? And the meat will go up over the blade. And so you can open up a fur-bearing creature or something like that easily. It's like a zipper. Okay. That's the advantage of that. If it's cleaning game, if you're going to be doing game stuff, a trapper is good. And the other clip point is just a general purpose where you can get the hole pierced into the hide. And this upturned tip is actually an advantage when you're doing that. Also cleaning fish, things like that. And really small game like squirrels, stuff like that. That tip helps you get up in there and like get the glands out of a possum or something like that. Very handy. For general purpose use, the 3-blade Stockman, you've got another clip point, general purpose cutting, and they will vary some in their blade selection here. That's a sheep's foot. A sheep's foot is to keep you from sticking yourself when you're having to do up tight, like notching ears. Stockman, working with cattle, not cleaning it, but working with cattle. And they would notch ears back in the day. So that's what that blade's for. So when the animal jumps, you're not going to stab yourself. You may cut yourself, but you're not going to stab yourself because of that. You can also bear down up against, like got a piece of line or something got twisted around, a hoof or whatever. You can bear down and go under it and then cut with that. That can be used for cleaning small game as well, but the trapper's better. And then finally, you've got your little bitty pen blade. Now, this pen blade is not just a straight blade. Most time, whenever you say pen blade, that's the kind of blade you get. That's a pen blade. That's actually a little bitty, like a trapper tip. Same idea. You can pierce under. So this 3-blade Stockman can do the job that you would get from the trapper. See, it's what the job is you're wanting to do. If you're wanting just a general purpose toting pocket knife, either one works good. If I'm going to be cleaning small game or even big game, the trapper's a better choice. Excuse me, pull my feet back up. Hope that answers your question. Ever since the stroke, that finger does not want to work right. Mike B, stuck in a beach and rear wheel drive truck, put it in low, got out on its own. Yeah. You can't do this today, but you can do it with the old 70s Fords and Chevys, like the old C10s and all. You didn't have a positive rear end. You would click like 2 clicks on your parking brake. Come all the way off, go 1, 2, and you'd put it in granny low and add just a little bit of tension to it, and you'd feel the wheel kind of dig in, and both wheels would turn. Otherwise, only one wheel would turn. That would make it shift, and you get both, so you doubled your traction, and you could ease out real easy as long as you went slow. Just as soon as you got moving like 10 feet, pop, you dropped your parking brake. John Loudermilk, Blackie, do you like the Blackbird knife better than the Gray Man? I had been using that Blackbird or the prototype, so it's got that woodsman's grind now for what, 6-7 years. And so when I went back to the Gray Man, it was a relearning curve. I had what was the Gray Man, which is a big Kephart type, is what I've been my favorite for many, many years before I got into the Blackbird knife. So I would not feel naked with either knife. And so here it is now, what, 3 months I've been using the Gray Man, and it's an extension of me. I'm very, very happy. Do I miss my Blackbird? Not really. But, you know, when this is over, will I give away my Blackbird and stay with my Gray Man? Probably not. I ain't that dumb. I really like both of them. And I really do enjoy both of them about equally, to be honest with you. I like the curves of the Blackbird for most of my woodcraft stuff. But if you aren't already into that, the Gray Man would be a better choice. And I told somebody the other day, said if I've got the money right now, which of these designs should I buy? And I said, have you ever had a WC knife? No. Have you ever used something like my Blackbird or WCSK? No. Then I suggest the Gray Man, because it's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not bad. You'll do it quickly, but you've got to have hands-on with the woodsman's grind to really get into it. And then it becomes an extension of you. But if you don't have that and you just want to skip that learning curve, go with the Gray Man. It's already a straight knife. And so it's not such an odd-looking knife. A lot of people are intimidated by the curved blades. You think it'd be hard to sharpen. It is not. But the Gray Man is just as easy to sharpen. So I hope that answers your question. It's one of them things where I can't say, either one. If you had to drop me in the middle of Alaska right now, either one would be interchangeable to me. I'd be very happy. Okay, wait a minute. What is the round-ended blade on the old fat-ended Barlow? Also had it on Terra Electrician. Oh, I know what you're talking about. That wider blade on the end of it. Oh, wait a minute. What is the rounded ended blade on the old fat-ended Barlows? Yeah, a lot of those Barlows that had that rounded in, again, a 2-blade Barlow or 1 blade. The broad blade Barlow, it's similar to this. That's a spear point. That's a spear point Barlow, which that's a Robinson, and it's not. It's actually you could call it a big Barlow. It's got 2 blades, but you see some of these type of a spear point versus a clip point. That's a clip point. That's a spear point. And I've seen Barlows in both of them. This type blade was better for farm work. Like I said, didn't stab as easy, but it was better for notching ears and doing stuff that farm boys, and for getting underneath and cutting that string on hay bales and stuff like that. That was a better one. So again, it comes down to choice and marketing. Good night, Justin. Jimmy Dunlap. Okay, sounds good. Correct. Tim Pierce, Sportsman's Guide to Swamp Camping by J. Wayne Pierce. That's the book. It's actually a very good book for swamp camping. He talks about how to navigate in a swamp, how to get. He would go hiking in a swamp. Just put on wading boots, and carry a backpack, and he'd go out there and wade through it. Which of course he'd been a game warden as well. So, or was he forestry? He was one or the other. But I've known Jay Wayne, camp with him. Really good guy, and he writes well. It's easy to understand him. Roy, I hear you. The old Pilot Air Force survival knife, which is a modern. It was more of a modern take. If you go back and look at a Marbles knife from the early 1900s, that's where they got the Pilot survival knife. It was from Marbles. Marbles knife brand made those, and military didn't get them made by them, but the design, it basically was. They made a bigger cross guard on it, because you're supposed to be able to stab through the thin skin of a aircraft and get your way out like a can opener. Oh yeah, Jeff, the muskegs up there in Newfoundland. Yeah, it's a swamp, and they are eat up with skeeters. Mr. Johnny, how do you know if a swamp is gator free? If it's in Canada, it's gator free. If it's anywhere else, I would say south of Tennessee, it's a question. If it is in lower half of Alabama, Georgia, all of Florida, half of Mississippi, out in the edge of Texas, you can about guarantee there's gators there. You know, and Alabama, we have the world record alligator, 19 feet, 2,000 pounds. It's been taking that like last 5 years down here in Alabama. And I can take you to places where there's a 16-footer that comes up on the beach often. You know, he's so big around, I probably couldn't reach around him underneath his arms. They had a 100 and something, like 110, 120 pound Malamute that the lady would go down there to the river and let the dog run along the edge of the water. And she took it down there and she saw the gator lunge out of the water, grab the dog, crush the dog, and then turned and dove. The dog never yipped, never made a sound. She just heard, she saw it, but the dog never cried out. It was so crushed when that gator hit it and turned and was gone. You know, big gators, but that dog running along the edge was all that. They'll get there and put their nose right at a watering hole and sit there and wait where animals come down to drink, and that's a lunge and bite. And that dog just run by and it was ready for a meal, I guess. Benjamin, Blackie, what is the history of the Marbles Company? The Marbles Company, I believe, started in the late 1800s and made outdoor gear, knives and stuff for the cattle butchering industry, stuff like that. And they progressed over to the outdoor type stuff when this newfangled idea of camping, as opposed to just traveling from A to B by horseback, became a thing. And they kind of like Abercrombie and Fitch and stuff like that. They went to mass producing knives and stuff for outdoorsmen, to process fish, small game, stuff like that, do woodscraft, bushcraft, that type deal. And they've maintained it ever since, you know. Satchmo, how are you liking the snow? Love it. It's such a rare occurrence for us. Just love it. Blue Bandit, Louisiana got gators. Very true. Yeah, Mitchell, I saw that. A lot of California's burning. Hope y'all are okay. Mudslinger, thank you very much. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, Preacher Man. I joke about it and say we got dinosaurs walking around in Alabama, but we're not kidding. You know, where 1,000 pound animal is not out of the question. Um, when I was a kid, there were hardly any gators because we had killed them all, whatever, hunted them to extinction, and they had to repopulate. And then by the mid 80s, you know, in the rivers, and I did a lot of canoeing, a lot of swimming. We did a lot of skinny dipping and just go swimming, jump off the bank, not even look, because there wasn't any problem with it. They were so rare, you know. Now, you go to cross water, you're going to have to wade or whatever. You sit on the bank about 20 minutes and you watch because he'll come up for air, you know. I had a case back several years ago. Fairly steep bank. We were camping and I walked down to the bank in bright sunlight. And I had just squatted down and was about to put my canteen, Army canteen, into the water to refill it. Canteen cup, excuse me, because I was going to boil water. And a cloud went over the sun, and I could see into the water, and about that far from me was about a 10-foot gator laying there looking at me. So I didn't move quick. If I had jumped, they would have triggered an attack. Kind of like rolling a ball of twine next to a cat. I just slowly came back up to full size. We're too big for them to mess with us unless we're in the water. Now, dog, they'll go for. That's in their edible range, but we're too big. So I went to full size, and I just walked backwards back up till I was about 8 or 10 feet away, and then I turned around and went back up the hill, and I pointed it out to everybody, and we got a big old hunk of firewood. And he took off, So you just got to keep your eyes open, especially in places like that. And we had someone going with us on a thing North Mobile one time in a kayak. We were canoeing, and they high centered up on the back of a big gator, and the gator didn't go to flouncing or whatever. It just turned and put a paw up onto the bow and just pushed down the bow and slid its head up onto that kayak and looked at the individual like, "What are you doing, boy?" Of course, we're paddling up, slapping the water with our paddles, going, "Leave him alone, leave him alone, leave him alone." And finally it slid off and it went deep again. And, he was white as a sheet when we got up on we pulled our canoes up on either side of him, and it was like, "I want to get in the canoe. I want out of the kayak." I went, "Okay." Because it was, it was a sit-in kayak. So he's only that much out of water line anyway. So it was, "Get into the canoe. Got you. I'll just roll over into the front. You'll be cargo. We'll tow it." Oh, yeah. Progressive Southerner, Blackie, should I invest in a flintlock Indian-made musket, or should I get a Traditions flintlock Kentucky rifle? That's up to you, boss. I would, if you're looking for something traditional, the Indian, but you got to refinish it because they always come looking fake. I mean, it's just the way it is. But I have seen several of them. They would get them and treat it like a kit. They'd get it home, take it apart, strip the finish off the stock, dye it a real dark color, and then apply a nice finish to it of like boiled linseed oil and sand between coats, and make sure that last coat is, you take really fine steel wool and lightly do it so it's not shiny. It's a matte look. And then they've rebrowned all the barrel and all the lock components, and it looks just like a good, a big fancy Italian or whatever. And they shoot well with normal shooting loads. You're not going to, double magnum them or anything, but they do really well. The Traditions Kentucky rifle is just quick and easy, and you can have it and be hunting with it this season type deal. So whatever you want to do. Yes, I'm aware about the Ted Cash making the tobacco tins and all like that. They're really cool. He's been making them since the 80s, at least, because I was buying them in the 80s. Oh, yeah. Blue Bandit. I've had that too. Roy C. That will wake you up in a hurry right there. Sanford. Hey, Blackie, I found a moderate sleeping bag military for $30. Yeah. The intermediate. Yeah, that'd be a really good one. Robbie, I believe they do. I don't know what helmets they've got in there, but give them a call, and they will ship to Ireland. I don't know what it's going to cost now, but they will ship. Oh, we talked about a minute ago. You talked about having a gator come up beside you. I was in Eck Lake, ECK. That's the name of it. It stands for something, but it's a lake on the military base over here, fishing in my canoe. And they were doing a controlled burn all the way around. And I had just got my canoe put in, and they rolled up and said, "We're not going to burn right here at the parking lot, and we're going to burn all the way around the lake. But we're not going to burn near your vehicle." I said, "Be fine." And so I got out there, and they had a 10-foot alligator, and her name's Susie, female. And she's just a resident in the lake. They got a sign warning you, leave her alone. Well, I'm out there in the middle of the lake fishing, and they set the woods on fire, and she popped up probably 100 yards from me. And then she's like 50 yards from me. And then she's like 25 yards from me. And then when I glanced back, I mean, she was right there. She was 2 feet from me and just sitting there. And the look on her in her eye was not of aggression. It was, "I'm just kind of freaking out. I'm going to be next to you, okay?" You had the feeling like you're the only person in the waiting room and the other person has to sit down next to you because, strength in numbers. And so I didn't mess with Susie. She just sat there and looked at me and like, "What's going on?" But the guy had set the woods on fire, and he came back about a half hour later, and he was up there on the bank. He went, "The gator's next to you." I said, "Dad, that's Susie. She's okay. I'm fishing off this side. She's staying on that side." I'd catch, fish, throw them back, whatever. And she never tried to bump the canoe. She never tried to say, "Boom, boom, can you give me some bait?" Nope. She just wanted company because the woods was on fire. Tim Webb, good evening to Kentucky. Oh yeah, Dave. It's a given in Lower Florida that you're gonna have gators. They're in the backyards. They're everywhere. Benjamin, good night. Martin, thank you very much to Argentina. Remax, hello to Northeast Florida. How much snow did y'all get? Gators, for the most part, are going to leave you alone. For the most part. They're during breeding season, yeah, they're kind of aggressive then. If especially if it's a mama and she's around her nest, she will chase you off. But other than that, for the most part, they could care less. Like I said, we're too big to mess with as long as we're not in deep water. If you're in, waist deep or less water, you're considered too big of a problem unless the gator is just struggling and that hungry. Otherwise, they're going to leave you the hell alone because you're just too big. On the other hand, if you're out in deep water swimming, he will go for you then because he's just going to spin you around until you drown, and then he'll go stuff you under a log and tenderize you a bit. But if you're on the bank, you're too big a struggle. You might hurt him. So they know enough to leave you alone. That's the reason I stood up with that one. Let them see how big I was. Oh, cool. 6 inches in Pensacola. Progressive Southerner. Blackie, is it possible for America to go to Argentinian style economic collapse? Is living in the countryside an advantage than living in the city? I don't believe that American economy can collapse like the Argentine economy. Our economies are based on different um, buy and sell principles and things like that. Our economy is so big and so vast that if we truly everything collapsed, the rest of the world would also collapse. I mean, it's just I'm never going to say the term too big to fail, but it's so varied in so many different things. Yes, they can be big collapses in sections, like remember when the housing market collapsed, or oil, or something like that. But as a whole, it's too diverse to do it. Argentina is not nearly as diversified as ours, and so that could possible. Is living in the countryside an advantage over the city? Absolutely. You have a greater opportunity for resources out in the country. Services are more available in cities. So medical and all like that. Cities are the way to go. Survival stuff is going to be out in the country is 10 to 1. Because people in the city will consume their resources very quickly. I remember back in 2015, the U.S. government did a survey that if X happened, plug in your favorite whatever, from terrorist action, bomb, whatever. If X happened, how much food is in New York City versus the population? Because the amount of trucks rolling in 24 hours a day is staggering. If you suddenly stopped every bridge, blocked off every entry into the city, went, that's it. How much food is there in the city for the population? And the number was 3.5 hours. Now, it won't all be consumed at once, but everybody has an equal chance to eat. It's 3.5 hours. And then that is an upside down pyramid. It goes down to a point. Within 72 hours, there would be no food in the city, and the city would have to be abandoned. How many, 10 or 12 million would have to leave because there would be no resources there for them to feed them. That's just how fragile a city can be. People living in the country have a great advantage over that because we can spread out easier, and even if people don't like you, at least they're often willing to trade with you. So. Terry Black, you've been considering 3-inch 410 cases for reloads. Can't decide on ready-mades or fire-forming large rifle brass size. What do you think? If you can get the pre-mades, do it. If not, fire-forming works. We used to take 45, I think it was 4570 or 444 Marlin brass, or 4570, but I believe it was 444 Marlin brass, and fire form that to be an all brass 410 shotgun shell, and load it with paper wadding. And you'd put the powder, paper wad in, which is just newspaper rolled down tight and stuffed in, packed to a certain tension. You'd sit on a board onto a bathroom scale, so you could put about 10 pounds of pressure. When it showed 10 pounds, you knew you was about right. Then we put the measured amount of shot, and then over the top we'd put a card. The cards were cut out of cereal boxes, and then to hold it in place, we used Elmer's glue around in there to hold it in place, and that's how we'd reload 410s, and works just fine. Yeah, that's the thing, John Loudermilk. Back in 2000, when I finished up college, and I was Phi Theta Kappa back then, and we were doing our convention, and we had some MIT guys come in to talk to us, and they were talking about the three big things facing the world. Forget politics, but three big things, and water was by far the worst. And they pointed out, like, Atlanta can't really grow anymore. They're out of water. They have reached maximum capacity of water. Where Atlanta sits is on rock, and there's only so many water sources that they can get. And so they are using them all. And that was back in 2000, 25 years ago. And they told us then you can't expand the city much more because there is no extra water, to put for houses and everything else. You have to start cutting water out of what you got in order for the new stuff coming in. And it listed how many cities and places the Oglala aquifer out in Texas, and all of that. That aquifer is not supplied by groundwater; it's under rock, so they're pumping it out. It was 4 ice ages ago that one was formed, and once they pump it dry, there ain't no water there, and so large parts of Texas, Kansas, and all that won't have water because there's only so much you can pump out of the ground. California has pumped so much water out of the ground, they have sunk huge tracts of land that are now 20 feet lower than they were in 1900, where the water's been sucked out of the ground and the ground settled. Water is the big crippling effect in a lot of countries, and etc. is access to water. So, in the big cities, when it goes bad, all them people got to have water. You can't be in Los Angeles without water. Coming from 11 states, the toilets won't work. I mean, you got to have water, and it's the big limiter of so many things. Martin, yes, after COVID and everything else, they proved you could leave the big cities and actually be happier living out in the country. The transition happened in 1924, 100 years ago. Prior to that, there were more people living on farms than living in cities. And in 1924, it balanced. And then it went to people living in cities, to where by 1990, by far more people lived in cities than lived in the country. And now it's actually reversing, because now with internet and everything, I can live on 10 acres in a backwater county in Alabama and have a business and have a way to talk to people anywhere in the country. If COVID proved anything, we can work remote and make a living. So now you can live where you want to live, where it's cheaper and you got the resources and everything, not have to. We used to, well, obviously, if you're going to be in business, you got to be in New York City. If you're going to be in Hollywood, you have to be in Hollywood, California. I mean, them days is over. And people are realizing they can move and live better in these places. We got a good friend who was in Tennessee for a long time, and he recently just bought land in Alabama and got down here and went, it's cheaper in Alabama. Everything's cheaper. Living is cheaper. My money goes farther in Alabama. And we got land, we got water, we got everything down here, and we're not standing on top of each other. We've got just a handful of big, huge cities. The rest of us are living out in small areas. So that's a real advantage to preppers and everything else. So someone asked a while ago about preppers down here. Almost all of us in some degree are preppers. We don't view it as preppers. We do it as just life. I mean, grandma taught you how to can, so we can food, we hunt, we fish, we still exchange, I'll trade this for that. We still do barter. We still do all of that down here. And so it gives us a distinct advantage over our big city northern friends when it comes down to brass tacks. Yep. Your rabbit hunting gun is an AR-15 and 410. I have seen those. It's actually quite interesting. Progressive Center. No, I have not heard of that kind of farming. Anonymous. Was Blackie an Eagle Scout? No. I was what you'd call self-taught. I was never part of Boy Scouts. I didn't have anybody in my family that was willing to help me get into that. I went on one Boy Scout camp out, and that didn't end well. And after that, I was just had to be self-taught. But I had a lot of the Boy Scout manuals and stuff, and I learned, and I was very lucky to have a lot of old woodsmen and a lot of old scouts willing to teach me stuff. So, Will, how is Sir Grouch doing? He's doing really well. He's aching from this weather change like I am, and I had talked to him, and I'm planning on going to see him next week. So hopefully this time he'll be in a shape and feel like it where we can sit out on the deck or whatever with our pipes and put on the camera and talk a while and do another video for y'all. Hope so. And he wants to get together and go to the cabin on his land. Me and some of my old friends like Grouch. And us go and spend a weekend or so down there at the cabin. If so, I will definitely be bringing a camera for that. So we shall see. Actually, Gray Wolf, the 3855, they still load it. It's still very popular in the black powder silhouette shooting. It's called a small caliber for that, but you can get ammo still for 3855. 3855 94 big bore was a respin of the 3855. They've respun that caliber 8 or 9 times now, but it's actually, you can still get 3855. Carlos, Blackie, what watch do you use, if any, in the field? Actually, I don't. I just use my phone. For many, many years, I used a pocket watch. And I've still got the pocket watch, but it finally just, after years and too many Duncans in the river and sweaty me and everything, after 20 years, it finally just quit working. And so I got it up on the shelf on the mantelpiece, and I've been using my phone ever since. Wristwatch is always getting away from me. I am abusive as all get out. I'd grab something and crack them. I've tried having the lens facing into me. I've tried it on either wrist, and I just will tear up watches. They hang me up. So I just tote my phone now. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about, Progressive, about air getting water, evaporative type. Those ought to work good in Alabama. We got 70-80% humidity all the time, so it ought to produce water like crazy. David, cool. Yeah, I'll be there at Georgia Bushcraft. I got to get off my butt. They told me if I want to teach a class, I got to tell them what I'm teaching, so I got to get off my butt and get on that. Amanda, if you're talking about Pyrodex, it is not chlorine based. Pyrodex is simply, it's a smokeless powder. And when they first brought it out in about 78, 77, 78, it didn't even smoke. The very first run of it didn't even smoke. And then people complained about it, and they added a component so it would smoke. It's actually sulfur. I think there's sulfur in it that makes the smoke. But it just has a different smell to it. And I remember reading somewhere in print years ago that they'd added sulfur to it. So. John Loudermilk, Blackie, did you go to Hang Con? How was it? I did go down to it. I had a good time. I got to hang with a lot of my friends and talk. And I was down there Thursday and Friday, and then I came back home on Saturday. And from what I've been told, they had sold like 700 tickets last year for it. So I saw a few hundred. I'm not going to say I saw 500 because it was a few hundred whenever I was there. But I understand that Friday night, Saturday, that's when the big crowd shows up. And so it was a very nice place. Got a big old concrete floor pavilion with a stage, very nice bathhouse, full kitchen, and they cook for you. They give out free breakfast, free lunch, and free dinner. It was white chili Thursday night, and then they do breakfast at like 7 to 8 on the morning, and then at lunch, I didn't eat the lunch. I just ate a supper with them on Thursday night, and I cooked for myself from then on. But yeah, it was very nice. I'm thinking about going back. Bears old ways. Blackie, can you get 55 grains of black powder into a 38 special case? No, it is not big enough capacity for that. You can't put 55 grains into a 45 Colt case. I figure 18 to 20 and put a bullet in it. It's going to be about the biggest you're going to get into a 38 special case. And the classic load for the black powder loaded 38 long Colt, which is what the special was replacing, was 17 or 18 grains of 2F black powder underneath a bullet. So somewhere around 20 and less is what you're going to get into a 38 special case. David Buckholder, have a good night. Cool. Anonymous, cool. Plating can be very profitable. At one time, I knew a guy that was making a pretty good little business where he was taking the triggers of Marlins and a couple of other guns and putting gold plate on the trigger. And it was just a fashion thing, but guys like that gold trigger on their lever action. So. William, good night. Thanks for tuning in. Oh no, Jimmy Dunlap, that gas fire done froze up. Sorry to hear that. Progressive Southerner, I hear you. Knowing how to use the weapons is a fantastic fallback because in the collapse scenario, it is not going to be long before all this stuff starts drying up. I mean, ammunition is going to be drying up, everything. That's one of the things I teach when I teach a class for prepping. I've taught the groups and everything. I said, you need a barter skill. You need some sort of skill that you can make and trade. And I teach people how to take PVC pipe and make bows out of it because whenever everything goes south, there are going to be a lot of buildings with PVC pipe in them. And you can make a usable hunting bow in about 30 minutes once you know how to do it. It's real simple. All I need is an oven mitt, a fire, and some sticks to stick in the ground to make a shape of it, and then a bowstring. And I can make a fully functioning 50-pound draw bow in 15 minutes. And I teach them how to do that because having something that I can barter to the next guy, a resource or whatever, is a real advantage. Being able to make an addle, a throwing stick, things like that, those will be marketable in such a thing. And plus, it helps you feed yourself. Mitchell might not be able to drink that. There's a reason. That's condensation sweat coming off the cooling coils inside of the air conditioner. There is some bacterial content that grows on that. That's one of the things that happens to a lot of air conditioners is the bacteria swells up and plugs up the thing, and then it affects it. So most of them are bacteria breeders and would not be something you want to drink without purifying. Could you water plants with it? Some plants, yes. Some plants, no. It just depends on what the plant needs to survive. I would not water food plants with it, just in case there was something that could be transmitted, because it is a waste coming out of even though it's just water condensing and sliding off of an industrial product. So I wouldn't want water coming off of the side of an engine block either. Reason I know this is when I was a kid, we had a air conditioner drain pipe that went out, and we planted a azalea bush and a line. Well, that's where one lined up where it was like 8 inches from it. It killed the azaleas every time we planted it there. I mean, it'd kill it in 2 or 3 days. And we finally figured out and ran the pipe further way down to a section that didn't have any of the azaleas. And the boxwoods loved it. The water flowing into the boxwood, that one did fine, but it'd kill an azalea, but it wouldn't kill a boxwood. So, and it was just the condenser water coming out of a central heat and air unit. So you just got to be kind of particular with that stuff. Good night, Robbie. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you. Will Rowell. Hopefully, I will have 100,000 subscribers soon. We're probably within a month of it. Really looking forward to it. What is it? Okay, you've been shooting black powder for a long time but have no experience with Pyrodex. What is the advantage attraction to Pyrodex? Is there one? Yes. One, you normally have slightly higher velocity with Pyrodex, whereas if you're getting, say, 850 to 9 with black powder, you may get 925, 950 with Pyrodex. Two, black powder is a Class A explosive. Pyrodex is a Class C flammable, which means it's easier to get legally. I have been shocked over all these years they have not banned us from getting black powder because of that, because it is a Class A explosive. And that just that legal jargon should mean it's kind of like C4, you know, but we use it for a propellant. And but Pyrodex is available now. When they originally did it, it was because you're a gun counter guy and you can get black smokeless powder, but you don't want to get black powder because you have to go from paying tax and get certified for a Class C flammable to you got to be a Class A explosive handler with a safe that's designed for a Class A explosive. That's why most gun shops won't even touch black powder, because you got to do such a big upgrade. That's like going from regular to Class 3 license for fully automatics. They just don't want to do the headache. And so availability, Pyrodex is everywhere. Pyrodex P does pretty good. Now, if you do basic maintenance, it's just as good. In fact, have shot more Pyrodex really than I have with black powder, because of the fact that it was just more available to me. Once I got with shooting clubs where we would do a mass buy, and members of the club would drive to Virginia to the factory to get all of it at one time and bring back and distribute amongst the club once a year. That's when I started changing over and shooting black powder. But most of my career was shooting Pyrodex. And they work good. It's just a slightly different. And how it burns. But as far as is there advantage of it, it gives you slightly higher velocity. And in some guns it will print better. In some guns it won't. But I've had good results with it over the years. Progressive Southerner. I hear you. Leather work. That you'd be very, very profitable. Thanks for listening in, brother Jonathan Frisbee. I look forward to us sharing a campfire again, brother. Yeah. Pyrodex. Some people swear it'll rust the snot out of their gun. I haven't found that to be true. It's about as equal with black in that. As long as you clean the gun reasonable, you're fine. Now, that's one of the reasons I developed my gun butter to be able to prevent that corrosion. And so I have shot both black and I have shot Pyrodex and not clean it for a week as a test in my humidity, and the gun didn't rust. In fact, like pick it up and just all the action's still working like nothing to it. It's dirty, but it goes, and that's what I clean and use in mine now. And several guys online and other channels have done tests and have been very surprised with it. I can't name the name, but it's a shotgun shooting school somewhere in the Tennessee, Kentucky area that they teach law enforcement and everything to shoot shotgun. And they came to North Carolina to buy a case from me because I said it'd work on shotguns. And so they showed up we were up there for the mountain readiness, and they came in on Friday and bought 2 tubs that morning and went and tested it. And the next day, the one of the guys that worked for him showed up and said, Mr. Whatever said, buy all of it you have. Because they shoot, you're going to go to that school, you're going to shoot 500 rounds in 2 8-hour days. You're working shotguns, learning how to do them. And they just warm this stuff up a little bit so it gets a little softer, wet the barrel down, let it sit 10 minutes, and it just wipes out. I've got guys over here at a local shooting club. They do high volume shooting. They're shooting 10 millimeters and 45s and everything else, and 9s, where they're doing matches where you're going to shoot 1,000 rounds in a weekend. And they're using it to clean their guns. It works that good for it. So I use that with my black powder and my Pyrodex, and I don't have rust issues. So. Patriot American, thanks for coming in. We're about to get out of here in a few minutes, but thanks for showing up. Yes, John, you can use it on modern guns. When me and Miss Lita developed it, it was strictly for black powder. But it was developed to be used in rifles, shotguns, anything. And for like 2 years, we tweaked that formula back and forth until we got something that really, really worked. And then I had a chamber insert for my 20 gauge. It's a 9 millimeter. And I had bought a box of 100 rounds of whatever, white box. Dude, it was black. I mean, God, that insert stainless steel. But when I pulled it out, it was as black as if it'd been blued. I mean, it was just caked. And I took and ran more butter, which it was hot summer, it was warm, got a big glob on it, ran it up and down, wiped it down on the outside, and laid it down on camera. And was sitting there talking about something else. And like 10 minutes later, I picked it up with a paper towel. When I wiped, every bit of it came off. I wiped the outside down. It was just like brand new. And I ran the brush up and down about 8-10 times, changed, put a fresh pad on it, ran it up and down, and held up light. And it shined like the gun had never fired. Like that insert had not fired a round. And it just fired 100 rounds of 9 millimeter. So, yeah, that's the reason got guys over here in the competitive shooting stuff. They started buying boar butter and gun butter for cleaning their guns after big matches, cleaning ARs or whatever. We haven't found anything yet it won't work with. I'm not saying there's got to be something out there, but thus far, it's what I clean all mine with. Bob Walker, glad to help. And if some of the writing we're seeing on the wall on YouTube of changes due to the change in administration, and we can do pro-gun content again and not be penalized, I will be doing more stuff and expanding out into other things. But I've still got to wait for them to stop doing that stuff. You know what I mean? But I want to go back and revisit some of my earlier videos that I did talking about percussion revolvers, and then I want to roll over and do single action revolvers, Rugers and Colt types. You'll see how similar they are. The Ruger is not similar, but how the Colt is just a 51 Navy with a cylinder in it, bore through cylinder, and how the parts interchange and etc. So it can be done. I also want to branch into other guns that I'm good with, of modern guns, ARs and stuff like that. I used to build ARs when I was a gunsmith. I wanted to teach you all the tricks I know about them, but I can't do it in the platform. So hopefully, it will change. Where do you go buy gun butter? Hold on. Normally have a tin handy. There we go. Handmade by c3gac.com. That's the lady. Lita Green. She's the one that makes it. But just go down there, just go to her website and look around. It'll say Blackie's Gun Butter. There's gun butter and there's bullet butter. The difference is gun butter is when it gets warm, it's a little softer. Like this right now, I can take my finger and just wipe down into it. It's softer. And then bullet butter is a little stiffer. The idea is gun butter should be kind of like Vaseline, and bullet butter is supposed to be like dip lubing bullets and stuff like that, percussion bullets and stuff. It holds up better, so it's a little stiffer. So if you just want a little thin coating to wipe, get the bullet butter. It's firmer. Oh, good night, Bear. Still want to get together tomorrow? If so, text me in just a minute, Bear, and we will work out a time to get together. If not, Saturday's good for me too. Well, guys, that's an hour and 48 minutes. I think we're going to call it quits. Besides, Bear's left the house. I mean, you know. Y'all have a good night. Thank you so much for all the prayers and support. I really do appreciate it. And we'll have more videos coming up real soon. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great night, guys.